So first thing to do is to remove the cover from up under the dash. Slides into two holes there. It's got two there where these little clips mount in. They can be very carefully pulled the centre bit down a bit and then released and pulled out. Okay, we have here a connector that is usually plugged up into the four-wheel drive computer there. With the plug-in kit, we unplug the factory connector, which is now plugged in here, and we put this little patch loom in that has the cable here that goes up over the glove box across the driver's side to the CANChecked gauge. Now if you're running a aftermarket ECU with our CAN gateway, it will be coming out up here, up above the four-wheel drive computer. There is a grommet that you can get out into the engine bay to the gateway. We will show you the other side that make it easier to see up there, but it's up above there, above the four-wheel drive control module. The grommet that I was talking about on the inside is, if we peer in through there, it's just behind the location for the ABS controller. If you follow the battery positive here, if you follow the cable that's on that, you'll see it goes through a grommet in the firewall. Through that grommet, you can very easily feed the 4 wires required for power, ground, CAN high and CAN low to then come out, and then all you'll have to do is pin it in the supplied DTM to plug into your gateway ECU. What we're going to do is take the factory aircon vent out and put the CANChecked gauge in. As you can see, this is a completely factory aircon vent that we will now take out and put the gauge in. First, we pull this out to the side. We then very carefully grab here and pop it forward, out like this, very carefully, like so, with a completely factory aircon vent in. Then, very carefully, we pop this out, just enough like that. We then grab this and very carefully pop that forward, out, and this end like so. The reason we pull this forward is because of this ledge. We then very carefully grab our OE aircon vent around here and pry forward like that. And your OE aircon vent doesn't have any wires coming out the back of it because it's an OE aircon vent. And then we pull our OE aircon vent out, and there we have our vent. Now, let's change over to a CANChecked gauge. As you can see, works beautifully. To pull it apart, take note how it comes apart if you ever want to put it back together. we just pop these clips out here, lift this out very carefully, like so, and we very carefully pop each of these little things out here. On both sides. Like so. Then this other one, like so. To put it back in, all you do is, should have paid attention. Now we're left with these two pieces. We have our CANChecked EVO-X gauge. We plug in the connectors at the back here, and in this particular case we have some DTMs. Your programming cable. Now, programming cable has to go through and plug in into the side before you clip it all together, because otherwise you can't do it. So we feed the cable in through there and plug it in the little side bit there. Like so. You'll actually see there's a little SD card. If you have a log file that you want to extract manually, don't need to, you can do it in the software. Then the gauge simply clips in like so, and then this slides in, and very carefully we put this side down and lined up. This side just slides in like so. These have clipped in, and there it is installed in your vent. This routes down through behind the dash, behind your aircon vents, over your glove box, down into the passenger side where the full drive controller is mounted. To route the wires, we just feed them in through here, in down the side. This is for the comms port USB. May be nice to put a cable tie around here so it doesn't fall all the way in for each time you want to pull it out to do something in the software. Now this one here is going to a power tune connector. You can also use the CANChecked one. These are actually already pre-installed into these little connectors at the back, which can't be plugged in the wrong way because one's an 8-pin and one's a 10-pin. So we'd plug that in. After feeding it up through there, that plugs into the OBD port. That needs to be run to an ignition source, which you're on your own. We then can plug it in, feed it down into the aircon vent, or just under, and then pop it back in. Tuck the cord down in behind. This trim goes back in, just under, and push down. This one, you carefully pull up and guide it in like so. And then we carefully have to get all these locking tabs into their respective spots. Slide it in through the bottom one first. Push it in, and then so this is the first page. This one is set up for a Haltech. We've got the IC7 display backgrounds for all your different gauges. This one we got a map main gauge, and then we've got smaller ones for coolant temp, battery voltage and lambda. Currently, since there's no data coming in, these are greyed out, but these smaller gauges will have the same layout as that larger one there. Now this is more of a information filled one. We've got tacho, intake air temperature, fuel pressure in kPa, engine oil pressure in kPa, engine oil temperature in degrees Celsius, boost in kPa, engine coolant temperature, and lambda up there. This little dash that can be set to show the gear position or current gear you're in. This is a performance meter. You've got your 0 to 100 timer, 0 to 200, and 100 to 200. This one is a logging page. It's for when you've got a few more added sensors to your aftermarket ECU. We've got up the top for 4 EGT inputs. We've got RPM, vehicle speed, battery voltage, map, intake air temperature, and lambda. This one here is more the air data. So we've got RPM, obviously, lambda, map, intake air temp, and baro. And then across here, we've also got a dial for airflow. This is a bit more of a overview of the sensors. RPM, engine coolant temperature, intake air temperature, lambda, lambda aim, lambda error, engine load, accelerator pedal position, throttle position, manifold pressure, boost pressure and boost aim, battery voltage, and knock retard. Here gives you a more live visual display of the lambda and the target, and again some tuning relevant dials. Here we got RPM, map, injector duty cycle, knock retard, ignition angle, TPS, coolant and intake air temp. This one here is again if you've got an aftermarket ECU with a few more sensors coming in. We've got engine oil pressure, engine oil temp, EGC 1, 2, 3 and 4, coolant pressure, coolant temperature, map, intake air temperature, fuel pressure and fuel temperature, lambda and ethanol content. Over this one, this is a G meter. You have lateral and longitudinal G. We've got down here a graph for vertical G and pitch, and these two dials we've got yaw and roll. This one is more just some of the other sensors that we got going to it to display. We've got individual wheel speed sensors, brake pressure, steering angle, and then a digital representation of your longitudinal, lateral and vertical G, your pitch, your roll, your yaw, your gear and your overall vehicle speed. And that's the last of the pages. We're back to the start. Now for some of the setup items on there, depending which one you purchase, it will be preloaded with the messaging for your aftermarket ECU to this CANChecked Gauge. So all you'll have to do is to just double check the sensor values, make sure they seem reasonable. But yeah, we've gone through, put the CAN information for all those represented sensors that we got there. So it should, as long as you turn it on in your, for instance, your Haltech, you'll need to turn it on to send a Haltech dash message, and then that will come in all that information. With the link, you'll have to do the same, make sure it's transmitting. There is added data on base file that also gets transmitted other than the generic dash one, but that's all programmed already for you, so you don't need to. There are a couple of things that you might want to do if you pull down and go into setup. Now it should already be set, but depending on which one you are using, the CAN bus speed will be different. If you're getting communication error, check that your CAN speed is correct for the application. 500 is for the factory stuff, and in the Motec, and 1000 is for the Link and Haltech. Also, there's a switchable termination resistor. We don't want to turn that on, doesn't need it. If for some reason you've got the right CAN speed set and the CANChecked Gauge isn't getting data, but everything works in your factory ECU or your aftermarket ECU, you may need to turn on that terminator resistor, but so far we haven't had that issue. If you're getting error messages on either your OEE ECU or you're getting it in your Haltech or Link Motec, chances are that the CAN speed's off. That'll bring all the messages down. The try TRX file, the correct one will be loaded on for your display when we send it off for the EVO-10 application. If you currently are running the OE setup and later on go to one of the aftermarkets, we can update that and get the correct data coming in. The block OBD port, if you are running it down to the OBD port, you need to turn that on to get data in. You will have to turn it back off if you've got a diagnostic tool that you're going to plug in and you've got the OBD one going to jumper loom. You won't be able to talk to it with the scan tool, but if you've just plugged it straight into the OBD one, it obviously will come out when you go to plug the scan tool in. Gears. If you select the gear and you cruise at a speed, and it will tell you when it's happy and you set, and you do that for each of the gear ratios, and you will have gear position come up. We can't set that for all applications because you have a different final drive ratio or you have different size wheels and tyres. It will vary, but any of the aftermarket ECUs, it is on the base file of that, and that sends it directly to this, so you don't need to worry about that. If you modify the engine RPM limit on your aftermarket ECU by a substantial amount, you will have to look in the owner's manual as to how to adjust the limit that flashes when the way this gauge is set up for. Splash screen, that's the little introduction. You can turn it off, but then you don't get the sweet EVO-X and PowerTune logo. If you'd like to make your own, look in the CANChecked Operator's Manual and figure it out yourself. Start page is obviously when it first turns on after it's gone through the EVO-X PowerTune splash screen. That's the screen that it starts on next as far as these 10 pages. You can do it as last use, you can do it as 1 through to 10. This will be preset for you. If for some reason you, for example, have your page swap when you rev the engine, if you go into sensor initialize, make sure page switch is on NA, then the only way to change pages will be swiping. If you've wired in an aftermarket switch for it, you can select that for it, but if it says RPM there, that will be a problem causing it to shuffle through. So that one in particular, just make sure is correct. And these two are for the CANChecked calculated to set your gear position. Make sure that they are getting data in that is correct and isn't something like your throttle position, because then your gear position won't work. Demo mode. Let's put it on that. As you see, it goes through and shows the gauges. There you can see the data and the little CANChecked gauges in this one. Again, you've got your tacho, and there is your red line point flashing. If you change your engine RPM up to 10,000 RPM because you've gone all out, you're gonna have to adjust it.